Hello everyone, my name is Ben and welcome to Life Transformation UK. Today I wanted to talk about anxiety and specifically how I overcame anxiety after suffering with it for about 23 years. I had suffered from anxiety all the way back into my childhood, going back into school, going into new settings. And I remember having this feeling of dread when I was going into new situations, going to meet new people, for example, and being quite a young person at the time, I didn't really know what to make of this feeling of anxiety. I didn't even know that it was called anxiety until many years later, and by that time I just thought it was a part of myself. So it's nothing that I ever made an effort to fix until I realised that I could. So this persisted through school all the way into college, and even when I was at university as well. But all this time I continue to suffer with this anxiety, along with periods of mild depression as well. Never knowing how simple it would be for me to change, for me to transform my life. So today I'd like to walk you through exactly what it is that I did to transform my life and to for lack of a better way to put it, cure my anxiety. Okay, so the first thing that I did was that I admitted that I had a problem, and it was a problem that I couldn't deal with anymore. It was something that I needed to fix. So that is the first thing that I had to admit to myself, is I can't live like this anymore. I have to change. I have to find a way to change. And oftentimes what you'll find is once you have made the decision to change something, things start to fall into line. Things start to become easier. So that's the first thing I would always recommend, is actually admit to yourself, yes, this is a problem. Yes, I have to change it, and let's start changing it now. The second thing that I did was that I had to stop viewing my anxiety, or what I initially thought was just shyness and panic and any number of other labels. I had to stop viewing that as my identity. Now, I meet people every week. I'd like to talk to people about what's going on in their lives, what's happening for them, what's going on, why it is that they're not doing what it is that they want to do, and oftentimes they'll come to me with these labels: I am anxious, or I am stressed, and it's almost as if that is part of their identity. It's almost like a second name for them at this point. So I had to stop viewing anxiety as my second identity. I am anxious. Instead, I had to recognise that it is just something. I don't know what it is at the time, but it is something. It's not me. It's something that I have to get a handle on. So the third thing that I committed to was learning as much as I possibly could, not just about anxiety, but also about self-improvement, about psychology. Around about the time that I started to make this change, I was actually studying law at university, and I dropped out after the first year. I dropped out. I went to the head of psychology for the university and I said, I want to take your course. I want to learn about psychology. And as the story kind of goes on, I actually did manage to go through and finish my psychology degree. But I also committed myself to learning as much as I possibly could. I was reading every day. I was listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, watching videos, lectures, documentaries, everything I could find to transform my life. And I'm here today because of the amount of learning that I put into it. Now, the fourth thing that was so crucial to overcoming my anxiety over time was building positive relationships. And not just building positive relationships, but cutting out the toxic, damaging ones as well. Because there really is nothing worse than coming home after a long day, and you might be stressed and anxious, and coming from one bad situation into another, whether that be your partner or a member of your family, a friend, a roommate, landlord, whatever it is. So I had to focus on building more positive relationships. And one of the ways I did that was I fell back quite profoundly on my family. I'm very, very fortunate to have a very supportive family, and they were there for me. They helped me through it quite a lot. I also was able to develop a great network of friends, of colleagues, co-workers, people that I went to university with, and all this contributed towards me eventually being able to overcome my anxiety over time. So the fifth thing that I did was I had to give myself a reason to change. So I had to start pursuing my goals and my passions. So I wrote down a life vision of what it was that I want, and I went about achieving my goals, one thing at a time, day after day after day. And as I've already said, I'm here today because of that change work that I put in to overcome my anxiety, my inner demons, if you will. So the next thing that I did was I focused a lot on exposure and elimination, and I'm going to talk about these a little bit more in a later video, but exposure was a big deal for me. And what I mean by exposure was I made a list of everything that made me anxious. So let's focus on, let's say, the social anxiety part of it. I would go through and I would make a list of all the situations that made me socially anxious, rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, and then tackle them starting from the ones so that you have some easy wins all the way up to the higher stuff. So for example, a low level one might be I feel anxious when I am eating out alone. So going to a restaurant, sitting down, ordering food on my own, that would make me feel quite anxious, but not run home and hide under the bed sheets kind of anxious. So I would just go out and I would do that, and I would eat alone, and nothing happened. And because I exposed myself to that, that stopped being a problem for me. I actually really enjoy going out and eating on my own, and not just that, doing any number of activities on my own now is a lot more fun now that I don't have the conscious thoughts in my head saying, somebody might be judging you, or somebody might be thinking this, or they might be saying that. It doesn't matter. It really, really doesn't. It really doesn't matter at all. And elimination. So finding out which things in your life are causing you the most emotional pain. So what things could you reasonably remove from your life that would make your life better? So one of the things for me was excessive spending. So I would spend a lot of money. So I would work hard throughout the month, I would earn my money, and I would spend it as quickly as I possibly could. And then as it started to get towards the end of the month and bills were due, and that would be another source of anxiety. So I eliminated the excessive spending. It didn't matter, so I stopped doing it. And that financial anxiety over time just disappeared. So exposure and elimination, those are two big topics I'm going to be covering here on Life Transformation UK at a later date. Now the final thing that I'd like to impress upon you as a major point in curing yourself of anxiety is recognising that anxiety is a normal thing. It is something which happens to everyone. I'm talking people from all walks of life. I've read that Adele is so frightened of going on stage that she has actually become quite violently sick before going up and performing in front of huge crowds. But as you'll likely know, once she's up on stage, she is incredibly talented, and she does not come across as nervous or anxious at all. She just, once she's up there, she just does it, because anxiety is perfectly normal. It's not something that needs to be cured. It's not sickness. It's not an illness in any way. It's normal. It is absolutely normal to be a little bit worried about what other people think about you, because only a few hundred years ago that would have been the difference between life and death. And we still have these mechanisms built into us, so it's still so important to us that we consider the way that other people might be feeling. So don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. That's in a different scenario, that would be empathy. But all in all, anxiety is not something that you need to cure yourself of. It's something that you need to come to terms with over time. Now, there are things that you can change to alleviate your anxiety, and these are the things that I've talked about in this video today. But it is a part of you, and at a certain point we all just have to accept that anxiety is always there at some point in certain situations, but that we can deal with it, and that's the important thing. Knowing that your anxiety doesn't have to control you. It's not your identity. It's just something that happens, and you can control it. So if I had to summarise all of this, is don't think of anxiety as something dreadful that's happening to you. It's just something. It's something that happens. It's an everyday thing, and you can take control of it. So I'd like to thank you for getting all the way to the end of this video. If you have found it useful in any way, feel free to like the video, and you can subscribe to Life Transformation UK if you want to receive more videos like this. So thank you very much for watching.